Is it alive? It's alive! Look at that. We have to have an intro like that because we're too cheap to have intro music.
Hey guys.
Hello, shalom, and welcome to another chat with the docs. This is an outreach of the Siloam Center for Traditional and Integrative Medicine of Janesville, Wisconsin. I am Mo Wolf. I'm the acupuncturist here. This is
Dr. Noelle Margolewski. I'm the chiropractor here.
And over there in the wings, we have Slim. He's our skeletal model. He gets paid on scale. So, not much happening in the world of coronavirus. Good.
Very good.
I was listening to the governor of Florida talk about how the Army Corps of Engineers had built some field hospitals and they haven't needed to use them. That's good news.
That is.
Wisconsin is, from what I'm told, not that much different. Our capacity is fine. Kudos. So that's where we're at. This week, because you guys liked the interactive get up and walk around stuff, then you don't have to look at our mugs. We're going to be continuing with that this week. And we're going to be talking about allergies and particularly allergy treatment with Nambudrapad's allergy elimination technique. And there's a lot of different techniques that are very similar to it, but the original, the NAET, is by far the best from what I've studied and learned. It can be tweaked a little bit here and there, but primarily you want to stick with somebody that sticks with the NAET protocol. But before we get into what it is and how it works, we are going to take advantage of the fact that we have Dr. Noelle here, and we're going to just go through a quick questionnaire. This questionnaire is designed by Cellcore Biosciences, and I use it because it's very good. And so we're just going to go through it. I'm going to ask you some questions, and these questions are going to be based on the last 6 months. Okay. So if if you lived in a circus tent when you were 6 years old and there was standing water in the corner, doesn't count.
Okay. So just present.
Just present.
You got it.
We've all heard enough about the circus.
Don't tell him all my secrets, Mo.
That's right, HIPAA. So, question 1, yes or no? Do you see mold growing at home, work, or at school?
No.
Okay. No, a no would be a 0. A yes would be scored as 2 points. And at the end, we're going to take these questions and we're going to come up with a numeric score. And it will tell me, are you in the green realm of problems? We don't have to necessarily worry about it. Are you in the yellow realm of problems? The warning, in which case it's not necessarily a major problem yet, but it's contributing to other problems and it will be a problem in the future. Or are you in the red zone? Ooh, that sounds tactical. Let me pretend I'm at Menards and get out my black nitrile gloves.
Don't forget your mask.
And my mask. Mr. Menard, I am your father. Not really. I'm too young. I'm just a puppy. The red zone would be, these things are a major problem and they're contributing to some very acute health issues. If our roles were reversed, I could tell you how I would score right now. And it wouldn't be pretty. And it would not be pretty. But let's keep going. So, and for the record, this is the exact same questionnaire for allergies that I would use on my patients. What I found is I get much more accurate data if I bring you in and I ask you these questions than if I send you home and say, hey, bring this back filled out. Because when you have it being asked of you right now, you can give the first answer that comes to your head, which is usually the accurate answer.
Mhm.
If you take it home
And think about it.
you'll say, I don't have this problem. I had one fellow who I sent this questionnaire home with him, a tradesman who is around leaking water, leaking moldy basements, crawl spaces. The guy was a plumber, and he's exposed to all of this
Oh,
stuff.
definitely.
The question, do you see mold growing at home, at work, or at school? No. Ever experienced water damage at home, work, or at school? No. Home, workplace, or school has a damp or mildewy odor? No. Do you ever spend time in basements? Cause or worsen any of your symptoms? No. You ever spend time in wet basements? No.
That's a bad patient.
Well, that's somebody that overthought it.
Oh, yeah.
That's somebody that overthought it. So when we're sitting face to face and I'm asking these questions, it works a lot better because you can say immediately what
Comes to mind,
which, just like when you're taking tests in school, that first answer that comes to mind is usually correct. So those were some of the first questions. Does spending time in a basement cause or worsen your symptoms, Doc?
No.
No. Do you have a wet basement, or is it ever wet?
No.
Symptoms decrease when spent time in a different location for at least a few days.
That they decrease or increase?
Decrease.
I would say if I go to a different location, it's sometimes the opposite with symptoms, just in general.
You probably have a mold-free house and you're going into moldy places.
The house is 3 years old, so it's a possibility.
It's not a moldy oldie. I'm sorry. Dad joke. By the way, some of you know this joke. What is it called when a guy who's not a dad tells a dad joke? A faux pas. So, and the 4 people that are watching this right now said, oh, yeah. Does your plumbing in your kitchen or your house bathrooms leak or has leaked in the past?
No.
Wet spots anywhere near your home, around the property, currently or in the past?
No.
No. Often sees condensation on the inside of your windows or on cold surfaces in your home?
I do with that, yes.
Oftentimes, the toilet tank in the summertime you'll have condensation all around there, and it drips down, and it gets underneath the floor or back into the wall, and you end up with mold growing in those areas. A real quick fix for that is ripping the toilet out and putting one in that has an insulated tank.
Okay.
But if you're going to go through that trouble, then you also want to put insulation on the cold water line coming into the toilet. Otherwise, you're going to have condensate there dripping.
Anyways.
The idea is to minimize the amount of condensation in your house. I live in a very old house built in 1931. I can say yes, affirmative to all of these questions. In the wintertime, we have water on our windows. You have to sponge it off a couple times a day. Otherwise, you will end up with mold growing in the mullion strips. Yep. It's just the nature of living in an old house. Character. Does your car have a mildewy smell?
No.
Lucky you. Do you often have brain fog?
Occasionally.
Occasionally?
Or is that a yes or a no one?
That's an occasionally.
Okay.
Reaction to supplements opposite of what's expected?
No.
Okay, let's talk about that for a minute, because you have had patients like this, I guarantee. I have had patients like this where I take their pulses and I say, okay, based on your pulse, you need, Jiwei Xiaoyaosan because of the liver fire that's driving your anxiety. You give them the Jiwei Xiaoyaosan, and instead of their symptoms decreasing, their symptoms increase.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's normally blamed for a situation like that is the patient will come back and say, well, my naturopath or my allopath has said that I have the HTMFR gene that's been turned on, and I'm just very sensitive to supplements. And about 50% of the time they straighten their tie and go, because, it's kind of a badge of honor to be weird. So it's interesting to me that one of the symptoms of a mold allergy and mold infestation in the body is it triggers this gene to be expressed so that your body can no longer process supplements the way that they're intended to.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of taking that Jiwei Xiaoyaosan to calm that liver fire
It's heating it up
and cool things, you're having the opposite effect. And for naturopaths, for chiropractors, for Chinese herbalists, we're left with, what do you do? Everything I give this patient, they're having an adverse reaction to. Well, it's that HTMFR, and then you start going down and working on those pathways to try to address the HTMFR. Got a question for you. Wouldn't it be cool if you could turn off the variable that's triggered that genetic expression?
Kill the root cause.
Yes! Isn't that why people come to us wackos?
Yep.
That's why people come to alternative medicine, because we brag about how we always go after the root cause. Mm-hmm. Well, here's the root cause. It's mold. Not just in your environment and, achoo, I'm allergic to mold. It's in you. It's in your sinuses. Yep. It's in your lungs. It gets into your bloodstream. And it creates these incredibly miserable conditions. People that have any kind of lung pathologies, asthma, chronic bronchitis, emphysema, COPD, these people are going to be very much at risk for mold interaction because they already have that inflammation there.
Yep. Okay,
Doc. So we talked about reactions to supplements opposite of what is expected. Do you have nosebleeds?
Occasionally.
Okay. You'll see this a lot of times in young people where just spontaneous epitaxis, the nose just starts going.
I had a friend like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think we all had a friend like that. The tragedy is that is such a limiting factor on the kid because they never know when their nose is going to just start hosing everything down with blood. Well, that's a sign of a mold problem.
Interesting.
Body rashes.
Occasionally.
You'll get people who just have unexplained urticaria all over them, the hives. Mm-hmm. And they go to their dermatologist and say, do I have candida? And they look at the skin and say, no, you don't have candida. It's just an allergy response. Well,
it's both.
It's both. You have a mold issue. You probably have candida as a co-infection. And most of the time, these same people, you can smell it on them, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. And it's not just when they take their shoes and socks off.
That yeasty.
That yeasty, fungusy smell. Mm-hmm. Kind of like when you you buy the cheap mushrooms at Century and you leave it in the refrigerator a little too long and you take it out and they're kind of soggy and they have that fungal smell.
Yep.
You can pick that up on your patients. One of the things that a good practitioner, whether it's alternative medicine, whether it's allopathic medicine, a good practitioner is taught very early on. Not only are you using your eyes and your ears, you're using your smell. You're using your fingertips. You're engaging all of your senses in this patient to try to gather as much information as you can. So believe it or not, if you're going to a decent practitioner, they're going to be trying to smell different aspects of you while they're working on you. They're probably not even thinking about it. I don't think about it. It's just
You just pick it up. You
certain
pick up
things
on
you
it.
pick up on. Breath, body odor, all kinds of things. Sort of like you're not necessarily looking, but you're seeing the different color changes in their faces. A lot of green or yellow around the mouth. Ooh, we have some digestive problems. Moving right along, does anyone in your home have asthma-like symptoms?
No.
So, in my house, remember our house is built in 1931, my son and myself have severe asthma symptoms. Years ago, a couple years back, we had carpeting in our living room and in all the bedrooms. We had a particularly rainy season. The ground was saturated. We live on a pad. We don't have a basement because we're down by the river. And the water was literally being pushed up through the concrete pad. And so you had moisture on the concrete underneath the carpet, and the carpets were moldy. And we were going nuts because, at nighttime, get around 6 or 7 o'clock at night, and suddenly you can't breathe, and you're going and coughing, and it was getting a little bit scary. So I did an experiment, and you can do this at home. I went to Menards, save big money, and I bought a respirator. And I bought the cartridges for the respirator that were rated for mold abatement, the contractors that go in and pull out mold damage in buildings. So I knew that the particulate would not go through the respirator. And I put it on my son. And he put it on, and within a couple of minutes, he said, "Hey, Dad, I'm feeling great." And he had quit coughing, and I thought, well, there's our problem. Yeah. So we ended up having to take all of our carpet out of our house. And not fun, not pretty, but
necessary.
It's necessary. If there's mold in your environment, we've got other things that we've got to fix on our house. But if there's mold in your environment, you've got to stabilize the situation to make sure that you can continue living there. I have a colleague up near Madison who her husband gets brain fog and gets really irritable in the presence of mold. And she can tell when there's mold in their apartment because of that. And they've been through all kinds of nightmares with the mold. But you start looking at the symptoms of the mold, and you start seeing it in so many different places. It's not one of those things where everybody has a mold issue.
I have a mold issue.
You have a mold issue, but according to what we've been going through, it's pretty mild. You probably don't have a colonization. Do you get sinus infections a lot?
Not a lot. I have allergy symptoms, but I wouldn't say they're sinus infections.
Do one or more member of your family have chronic sinus infections or irritations?
Irritations, yes.
Runny, blocked, or stuffy nose?
Big time.
You're going to have to lace up your shoes and go chase after it. Another dad joke. Do you experience static shocks?
Not often.
So how does that work? I don't really understand the physics of it yet, but when you have a mold infestation in your body, you're going to be much more susceptible to static electricity.
Do they have a negative charge then than the positive that you're picking
You're just
up on?
going to notice that you walk across the floor and you go to turn the lamp on and it goes, and it's like getting hit by a bull fence. Okay. It's not fun.
Yeah, I definitely didn't experience that. Just like somebody touches you, you get the little.
Yeah, this is intensified.
Okay.
So, wheezing or whistling in your chest?
No.
Only when you work. Wake up in the morning with a feeling of tightness in your chest?
No.
Wake up during the night with shortness of breath?
No.
Now, if you're following along and you're saying, that's me, that's me, that's me, then you need to call us. Shortness of breath when you're not doing anything strenuous.
No.
Wake up during the night with an attack of coughing.
No.
Wake up during the night with an attack of the munchies. If you
No.
do, then you need to quit your recreational. Shame on you. I tell you what. Chest tightness when around animals or a dusty part of the house.
Occasionally.
Body aches all over.
No.
Now you see there's also that component that can mimic fibromyalgia.
Mm-hmm.
Fibromyalgia is diagnosed left and right because now it's considered a syndrome within the ICD-10 codes.
Mm-hmm.
So now patient has all these weird symptoms, don't know what to do with it. Well, it's fibromyalgia. How do you treat it? Well, we don't.
Mm-hmm.
Go see a quack. They can treat it. Well, we can treat it because not only are we addressing the emotional component, which if there's fibromyalgia, there's always an emotional component. What was it? The study was done about 10 years ago, and 70% of ladies with fibromyalgia had a history of sexual abuse as teenagers and little girls. There's a huge emotional component to fibromyalgia. So if you have true fibromyalgia, you're going to start responding to the treatments for working on the emotional aspect of it. But if it's something else, like a mold infestation,
it's going to keep going.
It's going to keep going. You're not going to get it under control. So there's the body aches. Do you have headaches a lot?
No.
Extreme or unusual fatigue?
No.
Hoarse voice?
Occasionally.
Hey, Mac, want to buy a watch? Memory loss?
Not often.
Difficulty recalling names of people you know? Like Mo.
Sometimes.
Nausea, besides when I tell a joke?
No.
Vomiting?
No.
These things are all symptomatic of a mold infestation. So then what we would do is we would go through and I would take off my shoes and socks so I could do the heavy math, and I would score it. And we would say, are you green, yellow, or red? You, my friend, are in the green zone. It's not an issue. Yes, you have a sensitivity to mold, but that would be an environmental sensitivity. It's not necessarily that you've got an infestation in your body. So that leads us to, how do we treat an environmental sensitivity? Well, one of the easiest, most effective ways that I can treat an environmental allergy would be using Nambudrapad's allergy elimination technique. Now, I have a machine that copies the vials so that I don't have to necessarily use the vials, or typically look like this when they come. I make a copy of them with my equipment, so that way I don't have to worry about losing them or breaking them. So then my vials will look like this. So how does this work? Well, with NAET, it's a protocol. It's not a quick and dirty fix. If you're going to do something right, there are no quick and dirty fixes. And with NAET, you have to do it right because you're dealing with the immuno response of the body. A lot of people will say NAET is an energy medicine. Ooh, get the theremin. Did you play the theremin?
Oh, that one. The Twilight Zone.
It's not an energy medicine. It's a neuroimmunological medicine. And what you're doing is, in the case of mold, okay, this vial right here, what we do is we use some electronics and we take and we measure what the natural frequency of different mold spores, different mold species are. And there's a lot of them. I want to say I've got either 100 or 120 different species of mold just in my NAET kit. I'm a nerd. Some people collect stamps. I collect molds. And not even Jell-O molds. I'm a Jew. I don't eat Jell-O. It isn't kosher. So then what we do is we take the harmonic of those natural frequencies. Everything has a natural frequency. Natural frequency is that speed at which a molecule vibrates. Mm-hmm. You watch the cartoons and the old shows where they've got the opera singer singing, and she sings loud enough and long enough, and the glass breaks. Well, she's singing at the natural frequency of that glass, and those molecules all start vibrating. They're at the same frequency, but they're at different intervals, and they all line up at the same interval, and that glass starts to oscillate, and then it moves, it oscillates so much that it cracks and breaks. So what we do is we take the harmonic of all of those different natural frequencies of the various types of mold, and we program that harmonic into the water molecules that are in this vial. Water is a very special molecule. It will hold the natural frequency that you can program into it. You can tune its natural frequency kind of like a radio. And then for sanitary purposes, I take the vial and I put it in the bottom of this jar. And then I have you hold it. And then I test your body's fight or flight response to that vial. And it's pretty spectacular. People will say, this doesn't, you're just fooling me. I don't know what this is. But the reality of it is, if the body has a fight or flight response, i.e. an allergy to the mold, you hold this and we can quantify that fight or flight response, because when we do the muscle testing is bogus. You show me a study that shows that it's accurate. You know what? I don't have time. You want to prove it's wrong, it's bogus, you go prove it's bogus. I don't have time.
I say this has been a year in the making, actually, for this video that we're doing, because it helps. I've told a lot of my patients, go see you for this, because it helps.
I get a lot of practitioners who will say, oh, muscle testing is just energy hocus pocus. Well, you can say that, but it would be a very ignorant thing to say. That would be like saying to, well, a good friend of mine actually said that about it, and he's a naturopath. And I had to point out to him, look, you can say that, but then that gives all of the people that said that you are a quack treating with supplements, it gives them just the same leg to stand on. Mm-hmm. No, if you want to find studies that prove yay or nay to this, go out and find it. I'm not going to waste my time and look them up. I have studied it. I have come to the conclusion that there is credence to it. I have practiced it. I have experimented with it clinically, blind and double blind. Mm-hmm. It works. So I can test and see if your body has a fight or flight response to the mold. If your body has that fight or flight response, then I can get permission from your body by basically just asking you a question to get your brain focused on, yeah, I can allow him to treat this. So what we're doing then is we are having you sit up on the table, and I am going up and down your back with a little thumper gun, and we're going to show you in a few minutes. And we're stimulating the sympathetic nervous system nerve roots. Mm-hmm. And that's scrambling the signal of your fight or flight response. So now your body has physically shut off that switch that says, ooh, mold, I got to freak out. I got to have an inflammatory response. Now it no longer remembers to do that, which is really, really cool. Because if your body no longer remembers to have that fight or flight response, your body's not going to remember to have an allergic attack. And you're going to be able to live in the presence of this stuff without having that environmental situation.
You're reprogramming it.
You're reprogramming your neurological and your immunological systems. Now, that's if the issue is external. If it's external allergies to mold and you don't have colonization. If you have colonization,
Then you got to fix it
four
on the
score
inside.
and 7 years ago, a bunch of mold spores moved in, and they were all in white and black uniforms with funny hats and blunderbusses. Sorry. If you've got the colonization, 13 original, or is that herbs and spices? Anyway.
What kind of shoes are you wearing?
Moccasins.
Okay, I was just checking if they were New Balance or not.
No. By the way, Moccasins Canada, if you ever watch this, we're not above sponsorship, and I take a size 10 in one of your moccasins. Great for grounding, by the way. If you have that colonization, wow, rabbit trail. If you have that colonization in your body, you've got to do something about it. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons why I went to study with Silcor Biosciences is because they've got a great protocol. It works. You can treat the mold, you can treat Lyme, you can treat all kinds of stuff. And the really interesting thing is these infections usually travel together. Very rarely do these infections and colonizations travel individually. They like their packs. They're like teenagers. They travel in packs. Except molds can keep their pants pulled up because they wear belts. Anyway, the malls are closed. So we have a means to treat internal colonization. Now, we're going to take Dr. Noel and we're going to walk you through how we would test for this in clinic. But I'm going to warn you, we're having trouble with our microphone, and I'm not going to move our microphone. So it might get a little bit hard to hear over the next few minutes. We'll try to speak up. And if you've got any questions about the mold, in about 10 minutes, we'll be answering your questions. But for right now, Doc, would you go have a seat on the table?
Yeah.
My Bonnie lies over the ocean. Oh, bring back me Bonnie to me. Okay. So, we can do this one of two ways. We can either have the patient sitting up or laying down. I prefer the patient sitting up, but what happens when the patient sits up? I don't know if you can see this, but her feet are crossed. When people sit, their feet cross. What happens when your feet cross? Circulation changes. You get constriction on certain blood vessels, and you don't want that. You want the body to be as relaxed as possible. So what we're going to do is have you rub your hands. And Doc, if you would put your left hand out in front of you with your thumb pointing down. Now this motion isolates muscle so that we're not fighting against the entire rotator cuff. We're fighting against supraspinatus. We're fighting against one muscle. And when we do this, we're not arm wrestling, okay?
Don't try to win.
Don't try to win. What you want to use is the same amount of pressure each time we do this. I'm only going to use 2 fingers. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Resist me. Okay. Now that is the normal polarity on this point, this acupuncture point between the eyes and the tongue. If I switch the polarity, 1, 2, 3. Resist. Whee! She can't hold it up. Now I can do that same technique on you, Or if I get some muscle-bound goofball that does push-ups with his earlobes, he comes in, I will crush you, and he sits down, and I can do the same thing. Without it, I can do chin-ups on his arm. As soon as I flip it, he becomes weakling. So we know that her body's polarity is correct. If sometimes she's just too weak both ways, then we have to make some adjustments. If for some reason she's too strong, we have to make some adjustments. So if you rub your hands again, hold this in your right hand, and if you would take your fingers like so and turn upside down. So here we have position 1. This is measuring a specific type of allergy right here. 1, 2, 3, resist. Whee! Very weak. Go to position 2, which is going to be this finger. Ready? 1, 2, 3, resist. Whee! A little bit stronger, but it still has an issue. Go to position 3. 1, 2, 3, resist. Whee! Very weak. Now, we can even do this without, you don't have to put the fingers together. I can be doing 1, 2, and 3. Position 1, 1, 2, 3, go. Whee! And I can, as the practitioner interacting with your body, I can be doing those same positions. We can go without anybody doing it and go 1, 2, 3, resist. It's not as weak. So we have to be specific. So we've identified that there is a mold sensitivity. So what we have to do is we now have to treat you for it. So can we treat Dr. Noel for her mold allergy using the vial in her right hand? 1, 2, 3, resist. Whee! Okay. Here is where it gets fun. I'm going to be using this guy right here, and I'm going to be going up and down her spine, right over those transverse processes of the spine, and then just outside. What we're doing is we're going up and down the back shoe points of the body, or urinary bladder vessel.
Slam.
I don't know if you saw this or not, but our Slim is not the man he once was. Anyone need a femur?
Do you want me to face that way so they can see, or just?
Yeah, why don't you turn around and face Slim,
Face him? Okay.
and we'll show you how this works. So, we're going to start, and we're just going to apply mild pressure. We're going to come down the body. She's breathing normally. We're going to come outside just a little bit on those outer shoe points. We're going to come to the other side, come down the outer shoe points. Now, I'm going to ask you to take a big breath and hold it. When you do these breathing exercises, what it does is it puts those nerve roots in different postural positions in relation to the other tissue. Push it all out now and hold it. Woo! Now I need you to pant. Pretend you're a Yorkshire puppy and it's August and you're riding in a Volkswagen camper van. Okay, breathe normally. So we've just gone through the different breathing techniques, and then we had her breathe normally and we did it again. Now we can go back to a normal chair. Just don't cross your legs. You're going to hold on to the vial for the remainder of, you will come back to your chair.
Sorry.
It's okay. You're going to hold on to that for the next 20 minutes. At the very end, what we have to do is we will test again to see how strong the treatment was for you. And then we're going to use a laser to stimulate some acupuncture points that are very, very influential on the sympathetic nervous system, which is pretty cool. So that's the NAET process. It's totally non-invasive. It's very, very effective. It's, well, in your experience, it was a permanent thing so far. And that's a year into it.
Yeah.
Treating for, what were we treating, pollen?
It was just mostly environmental, I think, between trees, pollen, mold, grass. I have a bag of bad genes, so there's my joke. It definitely helped, though. I feel great. I know the mold count, or not the mold, the tree count is really high right now, and he fixed me.
So we can take care of, with something completely non-invasive, we can take care of it completely.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you do have hoops that you have to jump through. You just can't jump into treating the mold in most cases. In most cases, we have to go through and we have to treat, I think it's 16 or 17 basic nutrients that are in your body, in your diet. Otherwise, if you jump outside of sequence, remember you're dealing with the neurological system and the immunological system. So you can trigger an autoimmune response in the body if you do it wrong.
That makes sense.
And it can be pretty profound. As you start working through those basic 16 or 17, one of the things you'll notice is you might take a dozen to 2 dozen treatments to clear yourself from eggs. But then the rest of them just go boom, 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 boom. And you say, wait a minute, I used to be allergic to milk. But now I can have milk and it's not a problem. And all you did was clear me of eggs. Right. Because eggs have calcium involved. Eggs have some of the same nutrients that milk has. And if it's not a casein or a lactose issue, you might be responding to some of these other nutrients. Will it show up on typical IgG or IgA blood testing? It can. Sometimes it won't. Sometimes we're dealing with something way too subtle. Point is, we can treat it. We can treat it if it's only environmental. We can treat it if it's colonized. At this point, Adaware is going to tell me that I need to update. Yeah, right. At this point in our, whatever this is this a show?
I like it as a show.
At this point in our show, we will open it up to you, the viewer, if you have any questions about mold, allergies, any questions at all, whatever that might be. In the meantime, Doc, what are, for folks that are purely environmental, they don't necessarily have it colonized, what are some of the things that you would do for somebody that's in your situation?
With the mold issues, like you said, if you can pick up on it, get a good history of it, with that same things that you recommend, you have to take it out, of the circumstance, because you can adjust them all day long, but if there's something that keeps reoccurring that they're not taking away, you're gonna have the same things getting out of alignment, showing up. Same with yours, I'm sure, with acupuncture, correct?
Yep. Now, what are, and this is a loaded question, I know the answer, but this is for the benefit of the viewer. If the sinuses are chronically congested, what does that do to the C1 vertebrae?
Shifts it over, rotates it.
And what kind of symptoms are you looking at if the C1 is out?
Dizziness, vertigo, congestion, anything kind of up in the head.
Any kind of weird neurological wacky symptom, right? Mm-hmm. And you can have somebody who's had this guy out for a while and they've gone everywhere. Yeah. And nobody catches the fact that their C1 is out of whack. that their C1 is out of alignment. And, I've had patients who have had convulsions, and you put your hands on their neck and you start palpating and you can feel it out.
Mm-hmm.
And you say, how come no chiropractor, how come no acupuncturist or massage therapist or allopathic has seen this, either in x-rays or palpatory? The reality is very few of them actually
are looking for it.
So when you can find a chiropractor or an acupuncturist that is aware of these things, that has training in how to fix it, wow, what a blessing. Because now you can take care of these things that have been a major issue for so long.
And like you said too, with the diet, if you don't change it, or if you keep living in a house that you have mold issue and you're not going through and removing the carpets or whatever's necessary, you'll keep seeing it over and over again, that it's going to keep misaligning.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we're doing all we're supposed to do on our end, then it's like, what are we needing to change with your everyday to make this longer lasting for you?
And what's the classic complaint about alternative medical practitioners? It's, okay, you're going to be seeing me once a week for the rest of your life, right?
That's what they want to complain about, but that's not the case.
But when the practitioner is not astute enough to be able to identify these issues and say, okay, we've been treating to stabilize and adjust your C1. We've treated you a dozen times now, and it's continuing to fall right back out.
Mm-hmm.
What is what is underneath all of this? You need a practitioner who's smart enough, who's, got the humility to say, I don't think I quite understand all of this. Let's start at square one.
Mm-hmm.
Let me do some digging. Let me refer you to somebody who can help manage this a little bit better. And that's how we got connected.
Yep.
It comes down to finding the right practitioner. Mm-hmm. Not only do they need to have the training and the tools, they need to have the humility to be able to say, okay, we need to make a change because our protocol's not working. We need to either adjust it or scrap it and start over.
Yep. That's where you bring in, how are you sleeping? What are you doing at night after you get home? How is your desk set up? What are you eating? All different things.
And all of these things have a major impact. So Julius is asking via Facebook Messenger. Julius, I love the name, man. Groucho Marx loved the name Julius. Is asking, what are some supplements that can be used if you have an environmental allergy like Dr. Noel? What are some supplements that you would recommend?
We had it on here last week, that D-Hist.
By Orthomolecular?
Yep, I was going to say, I don't know if I can see on the shelf right now. Oh, there it is. It's behind the camera.
D-Hist? Hey, we have both the junior and the adult.
Perfect.
These guys right here. Natural D-Hist and Natural D-Hist Junior.
And I like to keep it simple. I don't like to throw tons and tons of supplements at it. If we stick to one that works and it works for you. So.
Well, and here's where that question about sinus infections comes in. Because your mucomembranes are having that response to the mold. And so the mucomembranes are swelling, they're getting the edema in there, they're secreting the mucus like they're supposed to try to clean themselves off, but it's getting clogged and stuck. What happens when mucus gets stuck in the sinuses? Sinus infections.
Can't go anywhere, can't drain.
So when you've got somebody who's constantly getting sinus infections, I'm looking at a couple of you right now. I know you. Then we have to say, what's causing the initial inflammation? Fix it.
Yep.
But in the meantime, just like we talked last week, the Puaria clear sinus works really well, especially when used in conjunction with herbal ENT, herbal ear, nose, and throat, a couple of Chinese formulas for drying up that edema in the mucal membranes, killing the bacterial infection that's established, and getting things to drain. So yeah, supplements, there's plenty of stuff that can be done for the acute symptoms of an environmental allergy to mold. If you're at somebody's house and they have a mold issue in their house, and 6 o'clock comes along and suddenly the mold starts getting active and you start sneezing and you start filling up, well, keep the dehist in your purse. Keep it with you. Just start popping one every 15 minutes or so until those symptoms start to subside. Any other questions?
Thank you, Julius.
Okay. If you end up with any other questions, feel free to put it in the comments section below in the video. Feel free to email us, info@siloamcenter.com. We'll make sure that question gets to the right practitioner. And if that's all there is.
Do you need to do anything else with this?
I do actually. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Let me grab something real quick. This is why I was never a Boy Scout. I'm not prepared. Let's have you come on back over here, Doc.
So this is the coolest part. I never miss it.
Well, this is the part where we are going to lock in the treatment. So I've got my little laser here. Doc, go ahead and rub your hands. Hold in your right hand, left hand out. Go ahead and go to position 1. Position 1. 1, 2, 3, resist. Position 2, 1, 2, 3, resist. Position 3, 1, 2, 3, resist. Now, I'm using very similar pressure. I'm not going to say exact same because I can't quantify that specifically. But you're a lot stronger. You can win. I'm going to have you kick your shoes off. So the acupuncture points that we're going to be stimulating with the laser are the 4 gates, LI4 and liver 3. These are very influential acupuncture points on the sympathetic nervous system because they, quote, spread liver chi. And the liver is pretty much at the core of that sympathetic nervous response. So hands on the lap, just like so. And we are going to laser you for just a few moments. And I add to the laser a little bit of vibration just to try to stimulate a little bit more. Sun Tzu wrote about how when you're in a battle and you're trying to communicate with your troops, you use as many stimuli as possible. Flags, sounds, trumpets, smoke, verbal commands. Well, it's the same when you're trying to get a body to respond.
Does that connect to the low back where you're stimulating with that?
Actually, it can. Yeah.
I could tell on that right side.
LI3 is right next to a couple of points called Ligu Da Bai. And right along this bone here, you can actually treat back disorders and back pain with it. So we're just hitting these guys with the laser and a little bit of vibration. And that locks the treatment into place. And one of the things that as a practitioner I can then tell my patient is, if you start having an acute attack between now and our next visit, I want you to just start rubbing on these points. Rubbing on the points in your hands, rubbing on the points in your feet. And that will hopefully cause the body to remember, oh yeah, we don't have to panic about this anymore. Sometimes we just have to go back and treat a few times. It can be done, it can be fixed. The point is, you don't have to be struggling. Okay, Doc, we'll come back. So, thank you for joining us. Next week, we're going to talk about glyphosate next week.
We can.
Let's talk about glyphosate next week, and how it, A, is such a huge problem, B, what it does in the body, why it's a problem, and C, how you can treat for it, which is very controversial. We'll see if YouTube even allows us to stream it. We won't be able to say glyphosate in the Facebook feed because they will delete it.
Wow.
Woo! Okay. Thank you for joining us,
Thanks, guys.
and have a great week.